Welcome again to my channel, everyone. This is Trevessence, and as usual, it is the morning, and we are going to be reading because reading is healthy for everybody, both the reader and the listener. Now, yesterday we were reading chapter 5 of the book Grace Under Fire when we had to stop because of the time constraints. But this morning we are going to be finishing the reading of chapter 5. For those of you who have been listening to me read the book, I hope you have been enjoying the reading as much as I have been enjoying bringing it to you. Now, let us resume where we left off yesterday. Ever so slowly, he reached across her to get to the telephone on the other side of the bed. The back of his hand brushed against her breast. She didn't think the intimacy was deliberate until he looked at her and saw the laughter in his eyes. He was having fun, trying to rattle her. No way was she going to let him know how much his touch affected her. There's another phone on the desk across the room, she pointed out. He was sitting so close to her, she could feel the heat radiating from his body. And if she reached out, she could run her fingertips down the side of his face and feel the day's growth of whiskers that made him look a little more dangerous than sexy. Ha ha! Now we're getting to my kind of part of the book, huh? This is my kind of story right here. Holy mackerel. Let us continue, guys. Welcome into the live. Thank you so much for coming into the morning's reading as we read Grace Under Fire by Julie Garwood. So this was what being aroused felt like. Since she had started dating, she had never had this kind of physical interaction with any man. She had read about it, heard about it from her girlfriends, but she had never experienced it. She had thought there was something wrong with her, perhaps something missing in her DNA, until Michael. The discovery didn't make her happy. In her mind, there was a huge difference between being attracted to someone and being aroused by someone. She had been attracted to Noah Claiborne before he married Michael's sister Jordan, but she hadn't been aroused by him. Okay, so now she knew how it felt. She also knew she didn't like it. And the fact that it was Michael made it all the more alarming. Her hormones finally decided to kick in. But with Michael, she couldn't catch a break. Isabel was a person who needed control, and Michael was snatching that away from her. Try to clear your head, she asked. Trying to clear your head, she asked. Who are you calling? You know, guys, I paused there because I was thinking, she's asking him if he's trying to clear his head, and I'm thinking, which head? Oh my, let's do that again. Trying to clear your head, she asked. Who are you calling? Bell desk. She listened as he requested that someone get his duffel bag out of his car and bring it up to Isabel's room. Then he handed her the phone so she could order from room service. I'm sure there are rooms available, or you could take the other room Kate reserved. Oh no, you want to stay here? Of course, I'm staying with you. She was sure he was bluffing. She ordered club sandwiches for both of them, a beer for him and a Diet Coke for herself, along with large bottles of water. He added a double cheeseburger to the order before she hung up. She had a plan. She would be patient, even if it killed her. He would eat with her, then realize his bluff wasn't working, and he would leave. She just had to stay strong and not fold before he did. Michael's cell phone rang. He saw who was calling, but waited until he was across the room before he answered. His voice was so low she couldn't hear whom he was talking to or what he was saying. Probably one of a dozen women he was currently seeing, she guessed. His bag was delivered, but he left it in the alcove near the door, which she believed was an indicator that he was indeed bluffing and had no intentions of staying with her. The food arrived 20 minutes later. Isabel ate half of her sandwich. Michael ate every bit of his and the rest of hers. She went into the bathroom, brushed her teeth, and got back into bed. Doing her best to ignore him, she pulled up her emails on her laptop but found it impossible to focus on any of them. Hmm, how can she focus? She wondered how she was ever going to calm down enough to go to sleep. The events of the day popped up like slides clicking through her mind. The man throwing himself into her arms, clawing at her, then falling, taking her with him. Next, gunshot, bang, bang. The maniac shooting at her, watching the bullet strike him between his eyes. He seemed to fall back in slow motion, and all the images appeared one from the other, and then the slide started all over again. God help her, she couldn't get them to stop. Her stomach felt queasy again. She took several deep breaths, and that helped, but she didn't know what she could do about her hands. They were once again shaking violently. She pictured herself trying to put on lipstick and smiled. It would be all over her face. She knew she had to stop thinking about it. What had Michael called it? Oh, yes, her bad experience. What she needed was a distraction. Michael unwittingly provided it. He held the door open while the dining cart was being removed, then locked the door, picked up his duffel bag, and went into the bathroom. No big deal, right? Until she heard the shower running. She had to admit that did freak her out. So maybe he wasn't bluffing after all. But then, neither was she. There was a cozy sitting area in the front of the windows with a sofa, coffee table, and an unstuffed easy chair and ottoman. Michael was too tall for the sofa, but he could sleep in the chair and put his feet up on the ottoman. Problem solved. Michael walked out of the bathroom, and her ability to concentrate went right out the window. He wasn't wearing much, just a pair of khaki shorts. He was built like a Greek god, perhaps Apollo, or maybe even Zeus. His chest and upper arms were all muscle. His stomach was flat, and his skin was bronzed. Get a hold of yourself. She scolded herself inwardly, looking down at the computer screen so he wouldn't see her staring. How could she dislike a man so much and be attracted to him at the same time? She glanced up again when he turned to reach for his navy t-shirt. She saw the 3 surgical scars on his back then, 2 near the center and 1 lower near the base of his spine. The scar tissue didn't look all that old, and she was pretty sure she knew what had caused it. You were shot in the back. Yes, he answered, not even turning around. 3 times? Yes. His tone was curt, indicating he didn't want to talk about it, which she completely understood. Were you shot in the line of duty, or was it an ex-girlfriend? I'm betting on an ex-girlfriend. He didn't respond, but even from behind, she could tell he wasn't frowning any longer. She sighed with relief when he unfolded the t-shirt and put it on. What was wrong with her? Had she hit her head when she... I'm sorry, guys. I'm thinking ahead of what I'm reading. Oh my gosh, it is just me when I'm reading, guys. I'm thinking ahead. Here is this sexy man with, as she described in the flat stomach and built like Apollo or Zeus. And here she is trying her best to ignore him. And they are in the privacy of a hotel room by themselves. I'm just thinking of what's going to happen. But let me continue reading. Trev, get a hold of yourself. She sighed with relief when he unfolded the t-shirt and put it on. What was wrong with her? Had she hit her head when she was helping the man on the ground? If only she didn't think she had, but it would be a great excuse for the incident. Indecent thoughts that were suddenly racing through her mind. They are racing through mine as well. She had a choice to make: slideshow that would undoubtedly give her nightmares, or erotic thoughts about sex with Michael that would make sleep impossible. Although she was loath to admit it, Michael was right. She really was a mess. She was still shocked that she had cried. It had been years since she had last had a good cry. 5 to be exact, when her mother died. Isabel prided herself on being able to keep it together, and she had succeeded until tonight. She had really wailed in the shower. She was certain Michael hadn't heard her because he would have said something if he had. Only a sensitive man would have pretended he hadn't heard her crying, and Michael wasn't the least bit sensitive. Still, it was mortifying losing control like that. It's late, and I've been up since dawn, Michael said. He stood at the foot of the bed. Are you ready to go to sleep? It's late. I doubted I'd be able to sleep, she said. I'm too revved up. Will it bother you if I keep the television on? No, I can sleep through anything. He looked over his shoulder at the chair, then at the bed again. If it's okay, I'm going to sleep in the bed with you. I'll sleep on top of the covers, you under the covers. Hey, hey. I don't know if that's a good idea. Sure it is. We'll both get a good night's sleep. Before she could come up with a polite way to tell him absolutely not, he turned off the light, stretched out on top of the covers, stacked his hands on his chest, and closed his eyes. She could have sworn he fell asleep seconds later. At least, now she knew that of the two of them, she was the only one plagued with lustful thoughts. He obviously didn't think about her the same way. He was quite blasé about sleeping with her. His libido took a nosedive. Too late, Michael realized getting in bed with her was a mistake. He told himself he had enough discipline to get through anything, even the night with a beautiful woman. Damn, she smelled good. He tried to block the images rushing through his mind, all involving Isabel, of course. In every one of them, he was taking her clothes off. Yeah, big mistake. He should move to the chair or sleep on the floor. That's what he should do. But what he did do was stay right where he was. That's what he stay right where he was. He could reach out and pull her to him. He blocked that thought too. Isabel turned the television off and hoped she could quiet her mind in the dark. She pulled the blanket up to her chin. The room seemed to get even colder. She vowed she would think about only pleasant things until sleep took over. It was a stupid plan. She came to that conclusion after 10 minutes of trying to come up with a pleasant memory. The man she had shot kept getting in her way. Oh, wow. That has to be quite traumatizing for Isabel. What she needed was another plan. She had too much energy to sleep now. Then it came to her. She would get dressed, get up to the fitness center, and get on the treadmill. She would run until she dropped. As quiet as possible, she pushed the covers back, sat up, and tried to stand. Michael stopped her. And oh, was he quick! Before she could blink, he had his hands on her hips, holding her still. What are you doing? He asked, his voice a sleepy whisper. I'm going to get dressed and go upstairs to the fitness center. You want to work out? He was slowly pulling her towards him. He had to think she was crazy, and she couldn't blame him. Who in their right minds would work out in the middle of the night? She put her hands on top of his and tried to push him away so he could get up. Your hands are freezing, he said. It's cold in here. Michael didn't think it was cold at all. You are shivering. He made it sound like an accusation. Yes, I can fix that. He rolled to his side and pulled her down next to him. His backside was pressed against Her backside was pressed against his groin. The backs of her thighs were plastered to his, and her arms were crossed over her chest, with his arms wrapped tightly around her, hugging her to him. All of a sudden, she was toasty warm. Well, it's about time. The heat radiating from him felt wonderful. This is all wrong, she cried. Yawning, she whispered, You don't have to stay. I'm okay now. You can leave. Another long yawn, and she was gone. Gone, guys. She was gone. But gone where? Ah, come with me, guys. Let me take you to the place. Joe, how are you doing, my love? Yes, Joe, I had a great night. You know the best sleep to get is when you are tired. Yes, that's when you get the best rest. And so I slept like a baby. And as the clock went off at 4, I was up and ready, started doing some work around the house. Then I came back to reading around 5:30, I believe. I read the Bible and then I got up, did some other things, get my baby out to school, and now I am reading this book before I get up and get some more things. I gotta go on the street, gotta go. I'm gonna take you all out with me, go water my plants because the rain fell last night. But I just think that the sun be so hot in the day that they need some more water. And I'm gonna be busy today, so I gotta go water them in the next few minutes. But I welcome you. Thank you all so much for coming, guys. We are reading Grace Under Fire. I'm loving this book. Every time you read a book that has a a chapter, a few chapters, a little bit of drama, a little bit of sex, a little bit of arousing. Yes, it's always exciting. Now we're on to chapter 6 of the book Grace Under Fire, written by the lovely Julie Garwood. Here we go. For chapter 6. For the first time in years, Michael slept until almost 9 in the morning. He was usually up and dressed by 6, 7 at the latest. He had slept hard. Sometime during the night, he had let go of Isabel, and she had turned towards him. She was still in his arms, cuddled up against him. Her face was pressed into the side of his neck, and he could feel her warm breath on his skin. Barely awake, he realized he had a beautiful woman in his arms, and damn, he wanted her. Fortunately, his mind cleared, and he gently pulled away from her, got out of bed, and went into the bathroom to take a cold shower. By the time he was dressed, his mind and body were back to normal. I'm not over what Josie said. When you're tired, I'm tired to make you can't sleep well for me. When I'm tired, I sleep the best. By the time he was dressed, his mind and body were back to normal. Isabel, time to get up, baby. I'm up, she said, face down in the pillow. Come on, wake up. We need to get going. I'm up, she said again, but didn't move a muscle. It took 3 more tries and a threat to carry her into the shower to get her moving. Groaning, Isabel rolled herself off the bed and staggered into the bathroom, the marble tile floor cold under her feet. Propping her hands on the vanity, she looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her hair hung over her left eye, and there was a slight crease in her cheek, a sign she had slept through the night without moving much. She splashed water on her face and brushed her teeth, then dug through her bag for something to wear. She decided on a short, straight khaki skirt, ballet flats, and a blue short-sleeved t-shirt. It was a bit snug across her breast, but it was soft and comfortable, and after yesterday's fiasco, she was determined that today would be a laid-back and stress-free day. After she brushed her hair, she looked in the mirror, gave herself an encouraging smile, and opened the door. Michael was pushing a room service cart to the table. He looked up when she returned to the bedroom. Her hair was down around her shoulders, and he remembered how silky it felt. Her legs were simply sensational, long and perfectly shaped. Her skin was soft and smooth. He knew because she had had one leg draped over him most of the night. Huh? He remembered stroking her. Oh, hell! He was at it again, conjuring up all sorts of inappropriate but thoroughly satisfying ways he wanted to make love to her. He really needed to get away from her, before he completely lost his mind. Halfway across the room, she stopped. Is something wrong? No. His voice was curt. Then, why are you glaring at me? I was thinking about something. Anything I can help with? She asked. He laughed. You're in a strange mood, aren't you? She sat at the table and reached for a glass of orange juice, and he noticed drops of blood on her bandage. Where's the sack? Where's the sack with the supplies to change your bandage? He asked. In the bathroom on the counter, I think, or maybe on top of my bag. He found the sack, placed it on the table next to her, and sat down. Do you want some coffee? He asked. No, thank you. I'm tired. I'm tired. I don't like drinking coffee, she remarked. But it's too bitter for me anyway. The lattes look so good with caramel and foam, but they taste awful. I've tried almost every combination. If you are going to drink coffee, you should learn how to drink it black. It's an acquired taste. Oh, yeah, coffee is an acquired taste. I'm not a fan of coffee. Every now and then I sip a little coffee, but I'm not a fan of it. But drinking it black, yeah, nah. Andrea, how are you doing? So good to see you, my love. Thank you so much for coming as always. It's my absolute pleasure having you here this morning as I read the book Grace Under Fire by Julie Garwood. Did you acquire a taste for it? I had to. There were some days I needed it to stay alert. He didn't go into details. She assumed he was referring to his time with the seals, but she didn't ask. He had turned away without an explanation. Michael moved his chair closer to hers, and while she ate yogurt and blueberries, he carefully removed her bandage. You shouldn't have gotten this wet, he admonished. Her shrug indicated she wasn't concerned, as though her shower was more important than any other worry. Michael understood. He would have done the same thing. Washing away any traces of the blood from the shooting would have been his first priority as well. He cleaned the area with the antiseptic she had given him, then opened the package of gauze and tape. Does it hurt? He asked. The injury was swollen and angry looking. Yes, it does. Her honesty made him smile. He was used to tough women, like his sisters Jordan and Sydney, who could be bleeding to death and would swear their injuries didn't hurt a bit. He liked the fact that Isabel told the truth. Want a Tylenol? Yes, please. Did you take your antibiotics yet? No, not yet. He got the Tylenol on one of the giant-sized antibiotic pills, waited until she had swallowed both of them, and then finished wrapping the gauze around her upper arm. He tried to be gentle as he applied the tape to hold it in place. You are doing a nice job, she said. Let me guess. After college and after law school, you went to medical school, then specialized, then went into the Navy SEALs, right? The dimple in her cheek reappeared and was interfering with his concentration. He laughed and shook his head. Are you suggesting I'm an overachiever? Ouch! He had pushed too hard on the tape. Sorry, he said. Theo and Michelle are at Nathan's Bay. They got in yesterday. We'll ask her to check your stitches. She's a surgeon, isn't she? He nodded. The gauze was beginning to bunch up, so he undid his work and started over. I think Michael is doing this gauze wrapping and unwrapping and redoing only because he wants to continue touching her skin. He just wants to continue being that close to Isabel. Tings Jamaica, good morning, sis. How are you doing? I hope you have a great day, my love. It's always an absolute pleasure seeing you. Thank you so much for stopping by. We are reading Grace Under Fire by the lovely Julie Garwood. He nodded. The gauze was beginning to bunch up, so he undid his work and started over. Isabel watched him. On second thought, you didn't go to medical school, she said when she saw the difficulty he was having. It seemed the most natural thing for the two of them to discuss mundane topics. As they ate breakfast together, Isabel was surprised by how comfortable she was becoming with him. The only other man she had ever really been comfortable with from the moment she met them were Michael's five brothers, Noah, Claiborne, and Damien. None of them had the ability to make her crazy, though, like Michael did. He could make her want to kiss him and scream at him at the same time. Did he think about kissing her? Doubtful, she thought. She was sure she wasn't his type. He probably only went for women who had triple degrees and carried guns. Ha ha! They had slept together and he hadn't tried anything. But then, neither had she. Michael, what? When we were in bed, yes, he prompted, wondering why she was suddenly blushing. What would you have done if I had tried to seduce you? To say she caught him off guard was an understatement. She didn't let it show when he answered. He didn't let it show when he answered, I'd let you seduce me. So now I gotta ask, how come you didn't make a move? Smiling, she said, I didn't want to embarrass you. I would be embarrassed? He asked, trying to understand. Isabel suddenly realized she was wading into dangerous territory. She hadn't intended for their conversation to turn racy, but now that she had ventured in, she couldn't turn back. The last thing she wanted Michael to think was that she was a prude. I would be too much for you to handle, and that would embarrass you. She brushed her hair over her shoulder. I'm pretty incredible. In bed? Yes, in bed, she agreed. It's most It makes sense that I would be superior. Superior to me? She slowly nodded. Michael stared into her beautiful blue eyes, saw how they sparkled, and knew she was having fun, teasing him. Want to explain it to me? All these years while you were going to different schools, studying day and night, and then learning how to be tough, carrying 1,000 pounds over your shoulder and holding your breath underwater for 80 minutes or so, I was home perfecting my technique. So you can understand why I left you alone. I was being kind. Michael was speechless. She pushed her chair back, got up, and went to the phone to call housekeeping to ask for something to pick up her laundry. To ask for, even me, I'm starting to see doubles, guys. Asking for someone to pick up her laundry. He couldn't take his eyes off her. He shook his head as though that action would get rid of his raunchy thoughts. Hell, he was going to be thinking about what she had said for the rest of the day. That isn't funny, Isabel, he said. Laughing, she said, yes, it is. If you could see your expression. You shouldn't taunt a man about sex, he said. I might take you up on it. I wasn't offering, she said nonchalantly. Hey, 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 Delia is in the house. Delia, how are you doing? No problem, my love. I'm here for the listeners. I'm here for the listeners. He is also attracted with her beauty and oh yes, Andrea. He's looking at the dimple in her cheeks. He's looking at her legs. He's talking about how they're perfectly made. He's looking in her eyes. He's just admiring this woman. What do you mean, where is Trev? God, you something else. I am right here. Lost in my thoughts, of course, but I am still right here. Sure you were, he countered with a grin. And I'm not worried. She continued as though he hadn't said anything. The last time I saw you, you made it abundantly clear that you didn't like me. She put her hand up so he wouldn't interrupt and added, It's all right, it's all right. I didn't particularly like you either. Oh my. He laughed as though her comment was ridiculous. It doesn't matter if we like each other. Sex is... Ah, he stopped himself before he said anything crude. Sex is what? His mind raced for an explanation that wasn't gross and would make sense to her. A pleasurable activity. Yeah, it's a pleasurable activity, all right. Sometimes it's extremely pleasurable. And that's all it is, he added with a shrug. Oh, come on. I would never have sex with someone I didn't like. He stared at her for several seconds, then slowly looked up and down, then suddenly looked her up and down. I would, he said. You might want to keep that in mind. She opened her mouth to respond, then stopped herself. He grabbed his duffel bag and zipped it closed. Come on, pack your things and let's check out. I'm not checking out. I'm going to keep this room, she said. I'll ride with you to Nathan's Bay to see everyone, but there won't be room for me to stay there. Besides, I want to stay here. He wasn't going to argue with her. Have you talked to Kate about this? I don't need my sister's permission. I know you don't, he said, but have you talked to her or Dylan since what? Since I killed a man? She asked, and before he could answer, she continued, No, I haven't spoken to either of them since I called Dylan from the street. They have called quite a few times and they have texted, but I let their calls go to voicemail and I didn't even text back. Oh, come on, Isabel, behave yourself. Why not? I'll see them soon enough, she said, and I don't want to talk about what happened over the phone. Yeah, okay, I get it. She rushed to change the subject. When is the celebration? The family dinner is Wednesday, and the party with friends and relatives is Saturday night. That will be a real blowout, don't you think? When I return to the city later today, I'll rent a car through the hotel and drive back and forth. Michael's cell phone rang just as housekeeping knocked on the door. Isabel handed the man the plastic bag with her laundry to be washed and dried. She explained about the tear in the jacket and asked if it could be repaired. After thanking him, she shut the door, gathering her purse, room card, and cell phone. She was ready to go. Michael gave her the bad news. Change of plans. Detective Samuel wants you to come back to the station. Why? More questions, he explained. He thinks now that you have had a good night's rest. Hands on hips, she demanded. Who does he think he is? He thinks what? You'll maybe remember something you forgot to mention yesterday. He shook his head. Hell, if I know what he wants. He's got the video. It's all there. I can't turn him down, can I? Smiling, he said, he's not inviting you to lunch. So, no, you can't turn him down. So, come on, let's get this done. Isabel suddenly felt guilty. Michael hadn't signed up for any of this. He had come to Boston for a celebration and a vacation, and she was interfering. You don't have to go with me. You have done enough. You should go on to Nathan's Bay. For now, I'm your attorney, and I'm going with you. He opened the door, stepped back, and waited for her to go ahead of him. She stopped an inch away from him, put her hand on his chest, and tilted her head back so she could look into his eyes. How much is this going to cost me? He leaned down and whispered into her ear, Later, baby. I'll tell you what it is later. Ah, ha! It wasn't what he said as much as how he said it that made her get goosebumps. Time for her to stop flirting with him before she got into trouble. As satisfying and as fun as the playful banter was, she had a feeling he was a pro at this sort of thing. She didn't want to get into a competition with him, knowing fully well he would make mincemeat of her. Fun time was over. Once they were in the car and on the way to the station, he said, I should call Dylan. He could meet us. No, absolutely not. Her voice was emphatic. He's on vacation and I don't want to bother him. I'll see him soon enough. Besides, I only need an attorney with me, and I've got one of those. He glanced over at her. What's going on? Why have you talked to Kate? Hold on there, guys. I got to answer this phone call. I must answer this phone call. Let me end the live.